They're not going to play by your rules. They're going to look at you and the rules you play by, and they're going to use that against you. Top of a team, Coach E. And you know what time it is. It's time to leverage your life. And if you didn't know, your life is your business. And if you're not living the life that you desire and deserve, it's possibly because you are not minding your business. And if you are not minding your business, it might be because you don't know what your business is. And if that is the case, you're in the right place, as I say, because I'm going to show you. Now, today, I want to talk about the fact that I'm a father, as you know, and I'm raising children. I'm raising both teenage girls, or a girl and a teenage boy. And there's two main lessons in life that I drive into their head and I want them to understand and grasp, especially for my son in this current environment, being that he's 13 and he's starting to step out into the world and starting to experiment and come into himself. Those two things that I want to stress to my children, and I believe that we should all stress to our children and even to ourselves if we don't know, is first things first is that life isn't fair. And secondly, that you should not fight battles that you cannot guarantee to win. I first want to deal with that fact of the fact that life isn't fair. A lot of people like to believe that life is fair and that life should be fair. But I believe that we do our children and ourselves a gross disjustice by not teaching them that life isn't fair from the jump and as early as possible. I know as parents, we try to teach our kids to play fair. I know as parents, we try to teach our kids principles and morals. But it's ignorant of us to believe or to assume that other people abide by the same principles and morals that we do. What I'm trying to say is this: it's not a bad thing to have principles and morals in your life, to have rules and standards that you live by. But it's very negligent to assume that other people live by those same principles. I mean, you got different religions, you got different backgrounds, you got different peoples with different understandings, different walks of life. So everybody doesn't believe the same thing the same way. The middle finger in America means fuck you, but in another country, it doesn't mean that. A thumbs up might mean it. In some countries, looking people in the eyes, too much is a sign of disrespect. In some countries, people like to be up close and talk to you, where other countries that's seen as a violation of somebody's space. Now, that's not having to do with morals, that has to do with cultural differences. But the same thing goes with your life principles and standards. There's some things that you stand on that other people don't. And for you to expect people to stand on the same principles as you is a mistake on your part. And this is where the unfairness comes in. You're going to assume that life isn't fair if people don't play the game the same way you play. But life isn't a game that has a certain set of rules that everybody has to abide by. Life can be considered a game, but it's not set up to where everybody has to abide by the same rules. In this game called life, the rules are made loosely and there are subjects to changes and manipulations of those rules because the base rules are so broad. But the root of what I'm trying to say is this: is that you have to teach your kids that life isn't fair. And it's the first reason why, it's because of the fact that people don't live by the same principles as you. But it's another reason. I'm teaching my son this because lately, especially in LA area, kids, young black kids, they have altercations with the police. And I seen my son watching a TV show called Shy. And in this episode, one of the youngsters was having an altercation with the police. And the police ended up slamming him and, abusing him and abusing his power and authority. And the youngster and his friend were both put in a compromising situation. Now, when I observed what was going on the show, I also observed that my son was watching this. And the first thing that came to my mind was, what kind of programming is my son receiving from this show? And the only program I could think he's receiving was that the police aren't fair and that those kids got treated unfairly. And the only thing that comes from that is anger. And from that anger can come rebellion. Okay. And some people might feel like they have to arm up and gear up and fight this so-called good fight against the powers that be. Now, I don't want my son to become a victim of that incorrect thinking. So when I seen that in the episode, I immediately said, no, I got to install in him the principles that I want him to live and abide by, because I want my son to live. And not only do I want him to live, I want him to live like a man. I don't want him to be a coward. I don't want him to back down from standing up for what he believes in, but I want him to think with intelligence. Now, in this episode, the youngsters were told to do something by the police. I'm not finna get into what the youngsters should have did and what the police should have did. What I'm going to get into is how I'm teaching my son to conduct himself based upon the principle that life isn't fair. If you're in the middle of being robbed and somebody has a gun to your head, it's not fair. But in that situation, what's the best thing to do? Argue with that gunman over the fairness of him trying to take something from you that he didn't work for and you did, or cooperating so that you can live? Well, the same way that robber has a gun and has the ability to take your life, the police officer in the certain situation with the youngsters had a weapon and had the ability to use force on these youngsters. And what I'm trying to tell my son is, because the police officer has the higher ground or has the privileged position, whether you're right about something or not, the point ain't to push the issue of being right or wrong. The point is to survive. The point is to live to see another day. And so the intelligent thing to do in a situation where the supposed aggressor has a position of authority and has a weapon and you don't, is to comply. Now, you're not complying out of some cowardice, and you're not complying out of some weakness of character. You're complying because you're intelligent enough to know, first off, that this ain't about fair. And second of all, I'm not finna engage and fight a battle that I know I'm gonna lose. There's another way to handle this. And I'm gonna handle it in the way that's going to maintain my life and allow me to live to fight another day in a better way. What I instructed him to do in that similar situation that he was watching on a TV show was to plainly and simply state to a police officer, if they were asking him a question, with all due respect, I will not like to discuss anything with you unless my parents are present. I do not mean to be disrespectful to you. I just was instructed by my parents to not discuss anything unless they're present. If the police officer persists and says, please give me your name, give me your name, I'm not trying to hear that, you still comply. Still keep your hands up in a position that shows that you are not a threat. You still go where he tells you to go. He tells you to sit down, you sit down. He tells you to put your hands behind your back, put your hands behind your back. But you don't have to answer his questions. And there's a way to tell him that you don't have to. And it's not, I know my rights. It's, with all due respect, officer, I do not want to speak unless my parents are present. Can I call them? Now, obviously, this might make certain police officers a little irritated because they might want you to just comply. But there's a way that you're approaching him with a spirit of conviction and understanding and a lack of fear that lets him know, I know my rights, but I also know good enough not to outstep my boundaries, because you are in a more better position than me to put me in a position to where I can be hurt. I understand and I respect your authority, but I also understand my rights. And I'm only asking. I know I don't have to ask, but I'm still asking if you respect that and allow me to only speak when my parents are present. I'm not saying that this is going to guarantee the outcome that you want. But what I'm saying is this is going to show that you are going to try to be in compliance with your behavior so that you can be in a better position, or until something comes up in a better position, like your parents being present or something else. What you want to do is you want to diffuse the police officer's anger by being respectful. It doesn't make you a coward. It doesn't make you a punk. It just makes you somebody that knows how to use some game about yourself. See, conversation rules the nation, and you get more with sugar than salt. So sometimes a better choice of words can put you in a better position, and it has nothing to do with bowing down and like I said, being a coward. And this all goes back to the fact that I want my sons to understand that fear is not the issue, because you can have principles that you live by, but that doesn't mean the next person does. And it'll be a gross negligence for you to assume that somebody lives by the same principles as you, even if they're under the same jurisdiction, under the same laws. We're all under the Constitution. We all have laws over the jurisdiction. The police officer has laws they have to abide by, the same as we, the civilians. But we also understand power. And we also understand that some people can make themselves exceptions to the rules, depending on the circumstance. Whether that's fair or not doesn't matter. I can give you an example. People that have more money can get out of certain criminal charges than people that don't. Why? For the simple fact that they can afford a lawyer who is more knowledgeable on the case to help them get out of the case without having to deal with the repercussions of it the same way somebody else who has to deal with a public defender. When it comes to judges making decisions on cases, a lot of times you're susceptible to the judge's discretion, meaning their their handing down of their judgment has nothing to do with the law or has nothing to do with what's legal. Yeah, they're going to operate within a certain legal boundary, but a lot of what they judge based on, and sometimes it could be in your favor and sometimes this could be not in your favor, is based upon their individual discretion. Now, that discretion can be based upon how they feel about you that day. That discretion can be based upon how they feel about themselves that day. You know what I'm saying? If they had an argument with their wife, you might be going to jail today just because they don't feel like being nice. If, you know what I'm saying, they was able to get a little cut off from their side chick, then they might feel good and they might let you get off on some stuff. Is that fair? No. But that person's in a position of power to operate within a certain boundary to where he can bend the rules a little bit. And he can bend them in whatever way that he wants to bend them based upon how he feels. That's another situation where fair don't exist. But what are you going to do? In the moment, what are you going to do? So we can't expect people to live by the principles, morals, or standards that we ourselves live by. That's very negligent. That's very ignorant. I'm not saying that you should not have none. I'm saying that have your morals, have your standards, have your principles, but don't expect anybody else to live by them. And then conduct yourself accordingly, which means treat them as a person that does not have the principles or morals that you live by while still maintaining the principles and morals that you live by. Don't sacrifice who you are, but also understand your rules of engagement. Okay? And that you have to fight the battle only if you can guarantee a win. And you fight it based upon the rules that can guarantee that win. Okay? And based upon how you can get the upper hand. And you don't get the upper hand by assuming somebody is going to treat the situation the same way as you. Because oftentimes, 99.9% of the time, somebody's thinking way different than you are, especially if they are in a position of power or they want to take advantage of you or they just want to get something from you or get something over you. They're not going to play by your rules. They're going to look at you and the rules you play by, and they're going to use that against you. They're going to use your morals against you. They're going to use your principles against you. Okay? They're going to use it against you because they know that that can be a weakness. That can be an area where there's a hole in your defense, and that gives them an advantage. So sometimes you should even look at your principles, your standards, and the morals that you live by as a weakness in the eyes of your opponent, and think about how they can exploit that, and then come with a counter for that, because that's how this game of life is played. Again, Life ain't fair.